Hey guys, welcome to 3 Mississippi. Sid here. Today I'm going to take you through making some homemade venison sausage. I'm going to show you the recipe that I've used on making my pork sausage before. This is what I like to call my Mountain Man apple pie sausage. Obviously I previously made it with pork from hogs that we have processed off our farm, but because Mike just harvested a deer, we're going to be doing it with venison and pork mixture for the fat. So I'm going to share the recipe with you. I'm going to show you how I do it. Let's get to work. So I'm actually going to be making a double batch today, guys. So normally when I do sausage, I do it in batches of 4 pounds. Today I'm making a double batch, so I'm working with 8 pounds of meat. So this recipe that I am sharing with you is, if you're doing a single batch, you would be cutting it in half. So if I say to use 8 tablespoons of garlic, or teaspoons of garlic rather, not tablespoons, although, you measure garlic with your heart, so whatever. Then you're gonna be using half that if you're only doing 4 pounds of meat. But again, if you're processing your own, you're probably at least doing 8 pounds. There have been times where we've done hogs and I have done 60 pounds of sausage. So this is gonna be a smaller version, obviously, because, well, the deer doesn't weigh as much as the hogs, and not making quite as much of it into sausage. So let's do it. 8 teaspoons of garlic powder, 2 teaspoons of pumpkin spice, 1 teaspoon of ground clove, 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of ground nutmeg, 1.5 teaspoons of salt, 1 teaspoon of coarse ground pepper, 1 teaspoon of ground red pepper or cayenne pepper, a half teaspoon of paprika, 2 cups of brown sugar. Then for our wet ingredients here, we have 1 cup of whiskey, 2 teaspoons of Worcestershire, 1 teaspoon of vanilla, and 4 tablespoons of vinegar. I chose to use apple cider vinegar, but you can really use whichever kind of vinegar you like. I'm gonna go ahead and mix these wet and dry ingredients all together. I'm gonna get this all stirred up and I'm gonna let it sit while I actually grind the meat. I like to let my mix sit for at least an hour or 2 before I add it to the meat, so I always do it first. Some of my batches that I do, like my Italian, that have a lot of things like, basil and oregano in it, I like to really let it sit overnight so that they can kind of come back to life in the liquid that you add. Now, the liquid that you add, your vinegar and your whiskey, in this case, a lot of times it's wine in other sausage recipes, is helping to preserve that meat and make it sausage, as well as your salt that you add. So now that I've got my seasonings for my sausage set aside that are soaking, it's time to start grinding up this meat. So we've got some pork shoulder that Mike cut up here, and I've got the venison that he processed out here. I'm gonna be grinding this together. I'm gonna try to kind of add it in evenly so that it grinds through evenly. I will be mixing it with my hands later, and that is also how I mix in the seasoning. I don't like to run it through the machine with the seasoning. Now, I have not done venison before, so if I find that the venison is too tough and it needs that in order to really work it in with pork, I've never had to do that. I've always been able to mix it just fine with my hands. I did put the smaller grinder attachment on my grinder. It would really work it more, I guess. So we'll see how this comes out this first pass, if I need to grind it a second time before I mix in the seasoning, or if I need to grind it with the seasoning for the second time. I'm gonna kind of see what the consistency comes through as and how it all mixes together in a minute. So again, very important that you kind of know your fat to protein ratio. You do usually want, enough fat in that sausage to really make it sausage. So do keep that in mind when you're making something like this. Yes, you can make leaner versions of them, but it's not going to be what they would say is true sausage. I am not doing this in casings. I am doing this in bulk bags for many reasons. I don't like to cook with cased sausage. I find most of the time when we have case sausage, we end up breaking it up anyway and making it into kind of a loose sausage that we could then make into patties or anything. So I find that that extra trouble of actually stuffing them is not for us. But if you're a person who likes to have, the links or, bratwurst type situations, then by all means, get yourself some natural casings and rock and roll it out. I am not that human. I do not enjoy making case sausage. I do, however, like making the loose bagged sausage, and that is what we are going to do today with our pork and venison. So my game plan is here, and I know this is going to be loud for you guys, so I'm not going to try to talk over this, but I'm going to try to put in a few pieces of venison with a little bit of pork, and then so on and so forth, just to kind of help it grind through a little bit more evenly. I do like using one of these big, I don't even know what you call it, like a big serving dish or big metal baking pan that we've had. We've used it for roasts. We've had it for probably 20 something years. It is beat to crud. We've used it for everything, but this is my designated sausage catcher, if you will. And I use this for every time I'm making sausage. This is where it all goes, because I can actually hold, believe it or not, I can fit about 30 pounds of sausage in this when I'm cranking the grind through. So let's start cranking. Another important thing to remember that this meat is all kind of par frozen. It's been in the freezer for a little bit, but it's not rock solid. It's easier to work with when it's cold. When you're working with like hot meat or room temperature meat, or simply just refrigerated meat that you've taken out that you're working with, when it gets hot and goopy, it gets really hard to run it through the grinder. It's much easier when it is nice and cold and stiff. And again, I'm doing this very similarly like how I would do lamb if I was mixing it with pork fat. I'm doing a few chunks of the lamb, a chunk of the pork in through after it. That's gonna help this mix in a little bit more evenly. And then of course, as I'm mixing it with my hands, it's gonna be good. And I don't think this needs a second grind. I mean, I'm pushing on this venison. This was a younger buck, and it does not need a second grind. I think if I over grind this, it becomes basically the consistency of pate, which I do not enjoy. So we will not be grinding it to oblivion. Look at this, guys. You can see this is just with doing a couple pieces of venison and then a piece of pork, a few pieces of venison and then a piece of pork. Basically sticking with your regular sausage ratio of meat or muscle to your fat. And you can see this is pretty well mixed in. I'm just kind of going over it right now. I do not think that this needs a second grind. I think if you do a second grind, I mean, if you like your sausage really like more of a pate texture where it's really like meat pudding, then go for it. I don't enjoy that. I like my meat to still kind of seem like meat. Call me crazy, but I really feel like this is good the way it is. And I feel like it's pretty evenly mixed between the pork and the venison. It's only going to continue to get more mixed here as I'm going to add the seasoning in now for this. Now remember, anytime you add pork fat to anything and you're not doing, you know, chemical preservatives. You know when you buy sausage at the store that's like been in the freezer and it's got all kinds of preservatives in it and it'll stay in the freezer for months and months and months and months? When you're working with fresh pork, either that you have processed yourself or that you got a hunk of meat from the butcher that you're breaking down and not adding anything to, it will spoil in the freezer. After about 3 months, that fat starts to, it can't hurt you. I mean, it's still edible, but it will get this kind of fishy taste to it. And there's a whole scientific thing about it, and we've talked about it before in other videos when we've talked about processing hogs and the bacon and why we always try to eat the bacon within the first 1 to 2 months, 3 months at the very latest, because that fat starts to it's mono something or other. I don't know. Mike knows all the sciencey nerdy stuff about it, but basically it just starts to get a little rank, even in the freezer. It doesn't stop that process. It slows it down, but it doesn't stop it. So it just gets a little funky. So keeping that in mind, think about that when you're making sausage. How much sausage are you going to consume, give away, gift, sell if the case may be, whatever it is you're doing, before it starts to get funky in your freezer? Because the last thing you want to do is pull out one that's been in the freezer for 4, 5, 6 months, give it to a friend, have them try it, and then go, oh my gosh, this tastes like fish. You don't want that. That's embarrassing and gross, and you don't want that. So, and again, there's nothing wrong with it. It's still edible. It's just going to have a little bit of that funk to it, which you want to avoid. Part of what helps avoid that I touched on earlier is in our mixture here, we've got things to help act as a preservative. We have salt, we have booze, and we have vinegar. Typically in any of my sausage recipes, and again, this is my own recipe, any of the recipes that you've ever seen for sausage that you're making from scratch, or any of the recipes that I do, they typically have one or all 3 things of a booze, a salt, and a vinegar. Some recipes I may only have booze and salt. Some I might only have salt and vinegar, but I typically try to at least put 2 out of the 3 in to really help it last longer, because it does act as a preservative and it does kind of help it along. Also, it just makes it taste better and gives it a little more punch. So with that being said, this is set now for probably, it's set for a little bit. It's probably been about an hour maybe since I made this. Maybe not quite, because it didn't take me that long to grind that once I got the meat from Mike and did a couple other things in between. But that being said, for this recipe, because there's not a lot of dry ingredients that really need to soak up the liquid, i.e. things like parsley flakes or thyme or oregano, like as if I were doing an Italian sausage that I really like to let it sit overnight and kind of bring those herbs back to life. This is more just some basic ground things that once you add the liquid and let it sit for a little bit, it's pretty much okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and add this in here and get this mixed up. I'm gonna be doing it by hand. Then I'm gonna cook up a little piece so we can see how it tastes and make sure that we're happy with everything and that I don't need to grind it through again, which I don't think we will. And then we'll get this bagged up. Give it a good shake. A shake and bake. Ooh, little. Ooh, that's got some juice on it there. Some juice. We like the juice. All right, so I like to just kind of just pour it kind of all over. Oh, my spoon sort of fell in there. Probably should have changed my church sweater before I started this whole evolution, but I didn't. That's okay. Man, this smells so good, guys. I wish, there's times where I'm doing like cooking videos like this for you guys and I'm like, man, I wish you could smell it, because it's so, like, it just smells good. I had Mike and I tasted it, because I hadn't made this one in a while. I had made other versions of my sausages more recently, mostly my Italian and my chorizo. This one is one of my breakfast sausages that he really likes. And for some reason, unfortunately, I couldn't find my other recipe that I was looking for that was more of a Italian, or not Italian, sorry, more of a English breakfast version, but my take on it. And I cannot find that recipe. I do believe I did a video on it at one point. I'm gonna have to search back through our archives. That might be the only thing that saves me because it's not in my recipe book. So I don't know what happened between the move and here, but I can't find it. So I just kind of give it a good stir to start, and then I'm gonna get in there with my hands. This is just to kind of mix it in a little bit. It's pretty evenly distributed there. Now we're gonna get in here like a good Italian grandmother, and we're just gonna work this into the meat. and try not to fling it out of the pan. And this is, you know, if you want, you can put gloves on when you do this. My hands are clean. I washed them like 500 times. Don't worry. Those of you that might come at me in the comments. This meat is cold, very cold because it was in the freezer. It was par frozen before I ground it. So if your fingers are sensitive, this might be something that you may not want to do by hand. A lot of people will throw this in their KitchenAid mixer and let it twirl around. My first couple batches of sausages, I did do that. I found that it actually did not mix it as well, and it kind of changed the texture of the meat in a way that I did not like. So for me, I don't like to do that. I like to do one grind, and I like to mix the seasoning in by hand. Oh, nice. I don't know if you guys can tell, but my hands are like red now because it's really cold. So I'm gonna get a little skillet. I'm gonna take a little patty of this. I'm gonna go throw it in a frying pan so that we can test this out, make sure we like it. There we go. Let this little patty cook up. See what the troops think. This pan, I'm not affiliated with them. They are not giving me anything. They are called Our Place. I have pots and I have a couple of their pans now. This is called a perfect pan, and then they have a new one that's a cast iron pan, which maybe I should have pulled out for this, but I didn't. I love these pans. They're non-toxic, but they are non-stick. They come with all these different attachments. So believe it or not, this one actually comes with a steamer basket. I can do dumplings in it. It has a thing over here. I don't know if you guys can see, probably not because it's like off cam right here. It has utensils that come with it that I just didn't grab because I'm using a flipper, not a spoon. But I just love these pans. You don't have to use oil in them, like if you don't want to for stuff. Like they're just, and they clean real easily. They can even go into the oven up to, some of them I think is 350. One of them I think the cast iron one's a little higher, more like 450. But they are, I just love these pans, and the pots. They're really great. So I know because it says pork in it, I am going to cook it all the way through. Obviously, since it's not straight deer, so don't come at me saying I overcooked it when this is all said and done, because it's sausage. You can't have medium rare sausage when it's got pork in it. So fight me. Go ahead. Fight me on it. Okay, so I just broke this up into pieces so I can take some out to Mike and Frankie. But I'm going to try these first because I want to know before I take it out to them to try. Oh my God, it's so good. Oh, you guys, it's so good. It's sweet. It's got a little bit of kick to it. You taste that garlic. It's good. They're gonna like this. You wanna come taste some sausage? Do we like it?
Lunch break.
Wait, some of that's for Daddy. You don't get to eat all of it. But you like it, I take it. Because she wants to scarf it all down. You like the flavor? It's good?
Yeah, really.
It's really good?
It doesn't even taste like deer.
I can taste it. I mean, it tastes like venison, but I mean, you can taste that buttery pork. Buttered pork. Let's see. Walking over into the shop here, which he's breaking down one right now, but we're gonna have him taste test this real quick. All right. Oh, I'm gonna, here, I'll feed you. Like a baby, like a baby bird.
Dude.
If you fed that to me and didn't tell me it was deer, I wouldn't know.
Good?
I want more.
Your daughter ate most of it.
Yeah. I'm hungry.
Deer shoulder. Actually,
That's not as
Deer shoulder.
appetizing.
It's not.
wow. Good job.
Yeah? Okay. Well,
That's outstanding.
that is a 1 through grind. I feel like if I ground it anymore, it's gonna be
I
pate.
needed 8 pounds.
I just
Is
did
8
a,
pounds enough, Frankie? May have to do the whole deer next time.
well, I didn't even make any other kind of sausage. This was just the breakfast.
That's all I want.
That's not
That
Okay.
and just deer burger. I think
Okay.
that's all we need.
All right, well, I'll start bagging it up. Back to work.
Frankie, you can go kill some more deer. That's good.
Hey, you should let Bunko lick that plate.
Bunko, you wanna lick it? Come here. Oh, he likes that. I like to use these little bags here. They say ground beef on them when we bought these ages ago because they came in like a giant bundle of like thousands of them or something. So it's taking us a while to work through them. I just put a piece of like painter's tape over the top and then mark what it is and put the date so that I know what's in here. And these are 1 pound bags for like loose sausage and or ground pork, beef, whatever you're gonna put in here is fine. I like to use my canning thing that you put in the can to pour stuff in. This works great actually for just putting it in here. I know some people use their sausage attacher to do it, but the sausage thing is such a pain because you got to take it apart and refill it. And especially if you're doing small batches, it's not really, I like to save time. I like to save time and I like to not have to do too many multiple steps of things. So for me, if I can do something in an easier way, that's, you know, not going to cause me to have to do 500 extra dishes. Can you imagine if I had done this and then put it in the mixer and then, you know, like it's just extra stuff that you got to do and extra time. And it's just not like, it's good enough. Like it's perfectly good with your hands. These are really great. I love these bags. Using this helps kind of keep the top clean. And then I just kind of squeeze the extra air out. I've got this handy dandy little thing. It's like a little ribbony sealer basically thing. And you just stretch this across. This is gonna have to get trimmed, but that's okay. And then you just literally push it down like that and it just seals it. And then this can go right into the freezer for whenever you're ready to eat it. The last bag. Sometimes it's funny too, depending on the kinds of sausage you're making, sometimes you'll actually end up with a little bit of extra. Now I didn't weigh these bags out, I'm just eyeballing them just from doing it, so they're probably not all exactly accurate. But remember, you're adding ingredients to your 8 pounds or to your 4 pounds or to your 12 pounds or however many batches you're doing. Again, remember I said I typically do my batches in batches of 4 pound groups. And so basically today this was 8 pounds, so it was a double batch. Yeah, and this one I overfilled because I was talking to you guys, not paying attention. So there's always going to be a little bit extra because you're adding ingredients, and depending on, you know, your recipe and how big, I squirted too much out. Depending on how big it is, you know, that actually takes up room too. So it's a little bit, you know, I got a little bit extra here, but I'll just go ahead and cook that little bit up for Frankie because she was whining for more of it anyway. So here we go, guys. I've got 8 pounds of this Mountain Man apple pie breakfast sausage that is a mixture of Mike's venison and some pork that he got, or rather I picked up that he processed the shoulder, broke it down into chunks so that I could grind it up. This whole process from start to finish took me about 2 hours. Now that's including filming and having to futz around because I was filming a little bit. If I were doing this on my own, 8 pounds, I could probably do the whole thing maybe closer to like an hour. 8 pounds goes pretty quick. I mean, I could grind it really fast. It takes longer to wash everything afterwards than it does to actually do it. But this is great. We've got 8 pounds of breakfast sausage ready to go in the freezer to be enjoyed. It met the approval of both the kid and the husband. That's important. I did only have to grind it once, which I'm excited about. You know, Mike had read some stuff that it, you know, needed to go through at least twice. Like I said, I used the smaller grinder attachment, so the holes on the grinder outage were smaller versus the larger ones that I typically use for pork. So it did make it a little bit more broken down just from doing that, and I think that was helpful. So I will drop the recipe down below typed out for you just to make your life a little bit easier. Down below there in the description if you want to try making this sausage yourself this deer season. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Now go forth and make sausage.